Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Warmly welcoming each and every one of you for the final or the third session of the series that we are doing in lieu of International Women's Day, Break the Bias, Lead the Change. So this is the final or the third session for the day. Emerging markets in Asia are starting to create enormous opportunities for women in business. The idea of gender diversity has been introduced to the workplace. It's not new, it's nothing new, but in order to progress, inclusion needs to be a bigger part of the conversation. Workplace diversity can't take place unless we get everyone in society involved in finding solutions to address some of the most challenging issues women face at work. So how can we make this real? That's why we have three exceptional leaders in this panel today who are here to discuss how did they make it real. So how did they face real life challenges, and they are here to share their successful life stories with you. So let me take a moment and first introduce these three leaders to you. So let me start with Kasturi Chelaraja Wilson. She is the Executive Director, Group CEO of Hemas Holdings PLC in Sri Lanka. So Kasturi is the CEO of Hemas Holdings PLC, and she joined Hemas in 2002. And she also serves in the board of Capital Alliance Limited as a non-executive director, along with several other Hemas subsidiaries in the healthcare and consumer industries. And she is also an active member of several industry associations and currently serves on the main committee of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and serves as a committee member of the National Sports Council of Sri Lanka. She is also the immediate past president of the Sri Lanka Chamber of the Pharmaceuticals Industry. Kasturi, warmly welcoming you to this panel discussion today.
Thanks, Ilanka. Pleasure is mine.
Thanks. Then let me introduce you, Yen Lu Chow, Executive Chairman, Whole Tree Foundation, Singapore. Yen Lu Chow is the Executive Chairman and also the Executive Chairman of the Whole Tree Foundation and also Over the Rainbow, co-founder and Executive Chairman of Asia Institute of Mentoring. His career spans nearly 40 years in tech, media, venture capital, and more recently, social entrepreneurship and philanthropy. A former Apple distinguished technologist, he is a successful entrepreneur and an active angel investor. Yen Lu Chow, warmly welcoming you as well to this panel discussion. Thank you for Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let me then introduce our third panelist, Sukun Chair, General Manager, Microsoft Southeast Asia New Markets. In Sukun's role, she is responsible for bringing to life Microsoft's mission to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And she is responsible for the markets Bangladesh, Bhutan, Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, Maldives, Myanmar, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And Sukun brings 29 years of technology leadership experience. And I am really pleased to have you as well, Sukun, in this panel. Warmly welcoming you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think without further ado, let me start the panel discussion. And I do have a common question for all three of you. So today, I think in the International Women's Day, we all know this year's theme is Break the Bias. So that's why this series that we're doing, it's about break the bias and lead the change. So that's what we're trying to do today. So speaking of biases, I'm very sure as seasoned business leaders, you all must have faced some kind of bias in your life at some point. So I'm really eager to know as the first question, aiming at all three of you, but would like to start from Kasturi. Speaking of biases, what are your personal experiences? What is your personal story? And how did you actually overcome that bias that you face at some point in your life? Very eager to know this, Kasturi. I think you can start this, but I'm aiming this question at all three of you.
So I must be honest, I didn't have a label calling it a bias in my career. But when I look back after my journey of being in the workforce for 30 odd years, I know I have faced it. Consciously, I knew at that moment there was one bias which I knew I have faced, which is an easy one to talk about first, is the bias that people think that women who are mums and I know workforce focus less on a career or will be less committed to a career. So that's this maternal bias they have about women. And that came to me when I was moving into from a role of finance into setting up shared services. Meant it was a project based, it was going to be long hours. And at that discussion, there was one question which was thrown at me saying, this means long hours of work. We know you have kids. And it was not said in a nasty way. It was just unconscious conversation statement. You have kids, and would you be able to commit time to work late? And I remember at that point, I mean, I don't know what about me. I always would stand my ground. I said, look, in the on road to that, I was in the SAP project, which meant that I worked till 1 o'clock in the night, at least once, twice a week, right? So I actually turned back and told them that, when during this project, when I worked till 12 and 1 o'clock, nobody stated custody work till 12 and 1 o'clock. So as a practice, I won't be working late. There'll be something wrong with me if I'm doing it, because that means I'm not efficient. But though I wouldn't want you to ask this question of me, and I kind of stated it out there. So that was something I noticed at that time. I knew it was not a normal question. That was because I was a mom. But the one which is more difficult, I must say, is the fact that so women are seen as warm, soft, gentle, kind of a nurturing kind of a form and shape. And women look at women that way, men look at women that way. And when you come into a corporate setting and you have a woman who is firm, decisive, can be assertive, that person is not, it contradicts your view or perception of a woman, right? So in that context, there is a bias. You don't like that form who you're seeing. So that likability bias is something I think I've experienced, and it simply forms. I've had so many 360-degree feedbacks, and one thing common is she's too assertive. She's strong. It comes out in a negative connotation where I had to tone down versus she's obsessed with performance. She gets things done. Those are positive. And these perceptions or biases come from generally your peers don't like you. Of course, the teams kind of they do say that you're too strong. And one thing which came for me was the fact that I was too fast in how I approach stuff, so that they didn't learn. So the team was more, they get to know the real you, so their biases kind of get eliminated. And they understand you're assertive and you take decisions, but that's your work. You're soft and you'll cry along with them when you see something sad or hear something really sad. So you're human and on the other side of it. But your peers actually don't. So successively, I've not been liked by anybody who works at a peer set and who looks at me from outside. Because from outside, they see this woman who is strong, who's decisive, who will be assertive, who will not be pushed back unnecessarily. They don't see the vulnerable side where the team sees me, because I'm part of the team. So it's like you let your cloak down when you work closely with the people alongside you who report to you. So that I have actually experienced. So that, and now when I look at it, and especially because of this theme, I actually look back at my life and I think I've been subject to the likability bias quite a bit. And I don't think in my career people are going to write commendations, peers who don't work for me. saying that I really like Kasturi. It wouldn't, as a human being, yes. And the last thing is, I think generally, and I'm not sure whether it's particularly with me, but I've seen it's a general thing that on performance, I think men promote themselves for their potential, versus women, we actually want to achieve and show results before we talk about it. So I think there is a bit of a slight, whether it's a bias, I feel that the way we approach it and people, the way people perceive our performance, because we don't sell it forward, we sell it only after after we achieve something, versus potentially how a man would profile. And no offense to you, Lee and Loon, I'm just saying that this is how I see it. And yeah, so these three are, I think, what I would like to share based on my experience.
Thank you, Kasturi. That is so insightful, and again, very much about the topic, making it real. So thank you for that. So Yen, can I aim the same question at you, please?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Kasturi. No offense taken. Okay. So I'm not going to talk so much about gender bias, as obviously, but I'm going to talk about other kind of bias. Yeah, being in a different, what I call generally a disadvantaged position. You know, I was born in a very humble family in Taiwan, and we immigrated to a place called Okinawa, which is now part of Japan, but it was part of the U.S. during the war and post-war, yeah, which spoke a different language. So Taiwan, of course, is Chinese, Mandarin, and Okinawa was being part of the U.S. Also living, going to American system. It was English as the formal language. So I was put in a big disadvantage. I don't speak the language. I hardly understood the language when I was like 11 years old. And by the way, I was a very shy person. I was a very, very shy person, introverted. I stuttered, when I spoke as a child, and I was very, I don't dare to go in front of the group and speak like what I do now. So, and then later, yeah, so early on, I learned how to overcome that kind of disadvantage. Later on, I moved to the US to study to the university and all that as a young man. And being a Chinese, at the time in the US, I mean, still that's, in a very different kind of, different country, first of all, different culture, right? There's certain kind of being a disadvantaged position there as well. But what I learned early on is really the most important thing that anyone can do is not to self-bias. You know what I mean? Not to self-stigmatize yourself because of where you are. I think that's number one thing for me. So one of the things so you gotta work hard, you gotta stand your ground, live your values, right? Over time, people will appreciate that, and of course, I think we'll generally do well. Yeah. The other thing I want to say is that now, I just quickly, and I think this is relevant maybe a bit to today's conversation. So I've been through like 5 or 6 or 7 major career and life transitions in my life. Major, yeah. And one of those transitions was about 12 years ago when I had a family. Had a family event, a family tragedy. We lost our son and only child to suicide. And that totally turned my life around. It got me on this social and nonprofit space, philanthropy space. I now do a lot of work in mental wellness, obviously also in mentoring. That's another thing that I do to try to bring about a more, equitable world through mentoring. And mental wellness is all about not being stigmatized and that everybody's equal, right? So that's very important. Today's theme actually is very relevant to the work that I do in the social space. We can talk more, but I think the very important thing not not to stigmatize or bias yourself.
Thank you, Ian. I think it's very brave for you to share that experience, and I think through that how you have crafted a path that you're enlightening more lives. I think thank you, Ian, for sharing that. And Sukun, let me come to you, but along with the question, let me also add another word to it. So the question I asked was, at some point in your life you must have faced biases. So let me also add stereotypes to this question. So I'm very sure you would have, as a leader, would have faced biases or stereotypes being at some point, and how did you overcome this? What's your story?
Well, I would agree with all that, Kasturi and Yen Lu mentioned, right? We all in one way or another have experienced biases, and we ourselves actually do some biases to other people too. I mean, I want to be very, open to share that. The one thing I would share on this specific biasness is that someone at work, right, would imply that I got the role because I'm a diversity hire. And I don't just mean this particular role, I mean some other previous roles that I have. And so you would have heard the corridor, or you would have people kind of shared with you subtly, sometimes overtly, to imply that because of my gender, to a certain extent, sometimes it's my race or my ethnicity that had resulted in a positive hire. And so I would say earlier on, it's an upsetting feelings, because it's just kind of reinforced the idea that the woman's marketability is not in her abilities, right? But ability to fill a particular quota. So, and there's this whole real worry that people may label these diversity hires, they resent them rather than being respected, right? So it could go through a spiral of doubt and anxiety. I mean, so I would say what I've learned from it is that, first of all, I put things in perspective. Women in all these situations must remember that no savvy business would hire a candidate who's not qualified for a job. It's just simply too expensive a mistake. So I think that is something we have to keep enforcing to ourselves, right? Bringing it forward, turning it around to concentrate on what I can bring on the table, focus and share with the colleagues, find common grounds rather than find areas where it differs. Because when you know yourself, we are been here, and even for new people who are joining and you think, oh, I don't have experience. But the truth is that we all have histories, we all have experiences, and we have gone through tough times. And so, which means that knowing ourselves and refuse to be shamed and to carry the burdens of other stereotypes or other biasness, I think that's going to be really important, and keeping our integrity, our confidence, and of course, an open heart. And I would just say, if all fails, chill, time will tell. Take the high road, man. I think people will know, the impact will be known. And so I think that's how I would see it. And so on your question about stereotyping, sometimes it comes in very different ranges, right? The tones or the scale is being used can be very mild, like, oh, it's an opinion, it's an inclination, right? It can go to the extreme of being judging, a bias, and then like a kind of a stigma. So to me, how I kind of overcome that so-called preconceived marker that is so deeply embedded within the society, the institutions, and the culture, it's in my mind, I have a clarity of what it means to me, right? To me, gender equality does not mean that male and female must be identical or that it will always require the same treatment. I'm very clear, okay? In my mind, it's equality really is about seeing male and female as equal status and value, and they have equal access to opportunities. And it's determined by the behavior, not by their birth. And I would also say what it is not, right? Oftentimes in discussions, same thing with quite a number of people that we work with, also that we come across in our community, is that it is not about equality for women does not mean inequality for men. Okay, and equal access to opportunity does not mean lowering the standards for women or holding a higher standards for men. So I think it's important again for us to find a common ground rather than have these two opposing ideas. So I really think more in allyship. So that's my my view. Thanks.
Sorry, can I add to that just quickly? Can I add to that? Can we add? Okay, the other. Okay. No, I love the common ground thing, and in my own practice, I always seek common ground with the other. I think that's very, very important. So I'm totally, resonate with me. The other thing is that so often we focus on the differences between people. Yeah, but we are so much more alike than we are different. Just look at our genes. Our genes are 99.999% similar. 999 whatever. Yeah. So we are very similar at the core. We are very similar, and we're one human race. I mean, ultimately, this is today's conversation. We're one human race. We're one people, ultimately. And if anything, the pandemic has shown us that, So yeah, so I think common ground, we are much more similar than we are different, and that's even more room to want to sort of level the playing field, because we are very alike. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Sukoon, and thank you, Yen. Let me now take the next round of questions towards role models. I think personally, if I may share, I think always sometimes a society may tell you that if you are a successful career woman, you cannot have a family. How do you take care of your children? So I think the moment I think I myself, when I came to Microsoft, when I started seeing people who are having both of these worlds, so that actually changes perspective. So I think that's why I think even in the Jobs of Survey report says having role models is one of the top 3 things that we need in breaking the bias and bringing more equality to the workforce. So let's talk about role models. So as I mentioned, personally, I have felt so inspired because the role models can change your life, because then you have someone to relate to that this is possible. So I will aim this question first towards Kasturi and Sukoon. So how do you think being a role model from one side and having a role model from the other side, especially for an aspiring career woman, a girl, a lady who wants to really climb up in the career ladder, how do you think, both of you being role women yourself, and also I'm very sure you both have your own role models as well. So what is your piece of advice, or what is your journey here, that how have they impacted your journey, and how can you impact someone else's journey? I'll come to Kasturi.
So Tilanka, that's a tough answer. Okay. Role models, in my view, I would urge people to look at it in a way that person can unleash their unique capability and achieve if they want to achieve it, right? Their journeys are not going to be the same. So what I would request is, for me, I didn't have a role model where career was concerned, because I didn't aspire for a career. But I had my mom, who was a hard worker. She actually did 3 jobs to educate me. And what I took out of her was that she wanted me to have a qualification so that I could be financially independent if I had to. And that was all that was pushed. And the rest of it is my work of what was priority for me at one time. When I didn't want a career, it was not priority. So I didn't want it. So I'm trying to lay context. You have different people around this conversation. Each one has had a different journey, different circumstances, including Yen. And that is unique to you. And because of that, you would make certain choices. You'll have certain resilience, and the way you look at life is different, right? So make sure that you will have diverse stories for you to be aspiring that you can be what you want. That's the only way I would look at a role model. But I would urge you all to understand that given Sri Lankan or Asian context, either you have an ecosystem which supports you, and that's needed. My ecosystem was my work and my domestics and kids who understood and having conversation. Then there are stories where you have ecosystems where the husbands support you. and they appreciate and encourage the wives to aspire to get to have a career. There are ecosystems where the father simply just encourages, has only a daughter and loves, like Asha Divorce, or loves the child to dream things which are not confined to a female's normal domain, and she succeeds. So whichever it is, you need an ecosystem, because it's not easy to be the mom and have your career and find your balance without having support. You can't sustain it. You need support. Whether it's a man or a woman, the man who's having a career has the support of a wife or a domestic and the parents or whoever. But that's given without asking, because that's the kind of traditional way we have viewed families. Your husband is going out to earn the living, so you all have to support the husband, and that's how we do it. But when you want now, when times change and women want a career, and that's their choice. Sometimes it's necessarily that both parties have to earn, because you need more for your kids and to have sustain a family. But that means both parties have to support each other. So getting that ecosystem is something you'll have to adjust based on your circumstances, but don't underestimate the importance of it. So I will only say, look at role models because you appreciate or value certain things about them. Like for me, Mother Teresa, I valued something about her. You shouldn't be them because you're unique, and just make sure that you figure out what's so unique about you, and every day is your achievement. So that I kind of am very cautious when they say I'm a role model, because my life is different and Yen's life is different. Your Soon's life is different. Everybody's life is different. So I don't know whether I confused everybody in the process.
No, not at all, Kasturi. I think you made a very valid point. So I think role models can inspire you and give you a role that you can relate to and inspire you, but you have to craft your own journey. I mean, each journey is different. So I think your message is very clear, which I think is so absolutely right. So role models are important. So that gives you someone who is very relatable, and you can get inspired by looking at someone, but own your story and understand what your own path is. So very, very clear, Kasturi, and the support system. I think if I may conclude or rather put the two key points, I think that's very clear. So Sukoon, the same question, but let me also add to or rather build from what Kasturi mentioned. I think so role models, I think as I also mentioned personally, so sometimes the biases can really, can make people really make wrong choices, so not know exactly where to go. That's why I think sometimes the role models can be relatable or inspire you. So I think in that way, Sukoon, if we discuss about role models, because it always keeps coming in every discussion, especially for in gender equality, role models are a must. So how do you think of this? Are they really a must, and have they helped you? And what is your advice, especially to someone who is aspiring to be a career woman or like climb up in the ladder?
Thank you. So many things to unpack. But I want to just again build on what Kasturi said. It is very circumstantial, and it's very unique to your situation, right? No two person is alike, and even if a person, it's different if you look back 10, 20 years ago. And I think that is very important for us to realize. So I think I want to make sure I give kudos to my mom. Absolutely, she's the warrior. In where we were brought up, being humbled, she's the warrior to stood up for bullies. She's the warrior in her own rights to make sure that we all have education, because she really instilled in us that education is the passport out of so-called humble life, right? And a warrior demonstrates grittiness and that you can overcome anything. And I think most of all is the moral compass of the gratitude. I just want to say, I must call her out. And of course, her eldest brother, my uncle, who have opened up so much of the world outside of where we lived, So I would just say, and many more. But again, role model is not one that you should kind of look for one. It's more like you reflect back and you realize how they influence you, It's not like you go there, okay, I want this role model. There's certain things that resonate to you, that is in you, that makes that you aspire to do something change, because every one of us are role model. Because basically, if we instill someone to do something positively different, we are role model. So it's not like you're stuck with that one label per se. That's kind of my view. And I would also add that at the end of the day, it's how we come out of it. And I see that the challenge of those that we look up to, or those that so-called we inspire and they gave us feedback, is they are able to connect to you from your value perspective, from your situation, and they can able to challenge and conquer two of the biggest enemies. And in my mind, I just simplify it. The first worst enemy is our inner critic. You know, there's this whole inner voice, you know, right? The one that whispers and the whines and just tell us about our poor self-confidence. It just change our thoughts. And it thinks it's protecting us from feeling hurt or abandoned. But actually, what it all does is to reinforce our feelings of inadequate or shame or guilt, and it just erode our self-confidence. So this role model actually see a very different, that shine in you. And so you kind of look to it and kind of get yourself out of it, right? So that's one thing I myself, I would say I observe, and also kind of the people who was giving feedback. And the second biggest enemy, actually, interestingly, the other spectrum, is the ego. At times, right, this whole ego is defined as this unhealthy belief in your own importance. So sometimes there are people who go to the other spectrum, and you can see how some role models just kind of ground you back, so that you become real in the real world. And so you don't have this so confused self-confidence, overreacting, obsessed with what people think about you. So I think a role model typically will give you that mindset change to break free of the negative voices in your head, so that you can make peace with the inner critic by learning how to make it work for you instead of working against you. And then for those who have this big inflated ego, so kind of ground you to make sure you are grateful and that you apply a beginner's lens. And I think that's what I would share. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukoon. I think that's a different perspective to the role models. I think that's a very I would say a unique perspective. Thank you for that. So I think I was planning to aim my next question to Yen Lu, but I think Yen Lu has dropped out for some technical issues. So until Yen comes back, Sukoon and Kasturi, let me aim another question at you both. You both are mothers and also successful business leaders. So I would like to discuss about that now. So as a parent and a successful business leader, how do you actually describe parenting from the eye of a woman business leader, or rather parenting while being a business leader? Because why I'm asking this is because, as you know, today we are discussing about break the bias, lead the challenge, change. So this kind of questions exist in society. So I mean, I think I am also bringing the things that the society can be aiming at or questioning about. So if we come to this topic of being a parent and being a business leader, how do you, again, I'll say, what's your story and what would you advise another one from your angle?
Okay. So that means so there are generally it's being a parent, being a spouse, and being a business leader, right? So in that context, how do you address it? So I was generally mostly a parent and a business leader. You never stop being either. You make choices around the way, but it means you need to be open about the choices you make. You need to be very transparent about why you made it to both parties. There are certain days your kids don't get the time they want from you because you made a choice to be at work, but they need to understand why. And the same way, there are times when you can't be at a certain meeting because your kids take priority. And then the people around the table and your boss or your colleagues need to understand why. I think what the ecosystem should support you is not it is not either or. They should support, whether it's a man or a woman. I'm not stereotyping here. We should understand families matter. Whoever works, we need to be able to support them to be the parent they want if they don't have, if they need support at that point. So this is, I think I look at that, I look at parenting and leadership that way. Of course, it was easier early on in my career because I was a functional head. Right. And at that point, you kind of clock off. Your responsibilities are purely that function. Yes, you are a leader. I was a director, CPO at that point, but it was very limited to that function so that I didn't take work home too much unless it was a crisis. But when you move into a business role and you start running businesses, there's a blur between where the work ends and starts, and because customer is king, all that. So you start taking responsibility home. For me, luckily, my kids were quite old at that point, and I could commit more time to my work. I could take weekend meetings. I could work like today. I'm here to see my kids overseas, and I could make the choice because they are older. But so that their time of your kid's age or the age of how young your family is and where you are in your career is also a thing to navigate. The more mature you become and the more equity you have, and you can also state the policy. So the advantage is now that I've come through the ranks and I've been benefiting by family-friendly policies. We have an ecosystem at Hemas that we say families matter, whether it's a guy or a girl, a woman or a man. Your kid has to be taken care of. There are no questions asked. How can somebody else support you for you to cover up, or how can we cover up? So parenting, whichever the gender, is now not easy because today, especially in Sri Lanka, when we go forward, it'll be that you'll need both parties to work. It'll dual learning households will be there. You will also have a lot of pressures in terms of bringing up kids with societal changes in society. You'll need to commit time and do that. So I guess and in this process, you can't give up being a leader. In the process of being a corporate leader, you can't give up being a parent. So you need to manage. And I guess if we want the best of women to be in workforce and become leaders, we need to support that. So I'll leave it at that because you don't make choices. You have to be both. All three. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no choice there. Thank you, Kasturi, for that. Sukun, can I direct the same question at you? Yes.
Yeah. Again, I think it's so being a single mom with 2 teenage kids, right? I think I would bring back to one thing very core, which is we have to be very honest with ourselves. There is a time and place for everything. So sometimes like when I was pregnant with the babies, I just have to accept the fact that I will have to take time off, and I have to accept it, and it's a choice, right? Rather than trying to prove that you have the cake and kind of eat it too, then you have a bit of a unrealistic strain or stress that you put on yourself. So I just think that our journey as in working, right, is long. Don't worry too much of that 1 year or 2 years. The horizon is long. You can have take 2, you can have take 3, right? So I would just say, go back to the core. What exactly that you look in the mirror, there's a time and place for everything. What would you honestly say and you would kind of honestly do? And so that's one. Second, in the beginning, and my role traveled a lot, by the way, even in the very beginning when I joined, before even I joined the company, right? It's regional role, travel a lot. And you have that guilty feeling, when you leave your baby and your kids. And I can't really remember the last time I attended any of the parent teacher. I got my sister to attend. And I'd be lost there because they will be talking about how do you teach the kids the formula of maths. I'm like, oh my God, what is that? So and it reached a stage where, again, I'm at peace with it. I know that's not me. So I don't want to force myself being who I'm not And then you don't want a resentment, right? So, and what that I'm trying to bring back is thirdly, I am a better mom because I'm a leader and I'm working. And I am a better leader because I'm a mom. I actually see the two playing so intercrossingly because there are certain things that I do at work, I actually apply it at work, so at my home. For example, if there is a situation to talk to the kids, the boys, I know I have to negotiate and trade off the what and the how. I can't say, okay, boys, I want to talk to you and I want to talk to you now. It doesn't work, right? You want to talk, but you have to give them some space. Maybe not now, but maybe tomorrow. So same thing with lead teams. You can't have it that thing you want, but you also want it the way you want it. It doesn't work that way. So what I'm trying to say is that there are certain things that I just kind of apply both and I learn from it. So when I realize at work, I say, oh my God, I should have done that differently actually. So I better go back and give kudos. Remember nowadays, right? Kudos, small wins. Thank you, boys. Thank you for so and then, but sometimes you just have to be that, no, this is not acceptable. This is the boundary. So it's just reminding me and make me a better mom, I would say, and a better leader. Thanks.
Sukun, I think that's a beautiful thought. You said so because you're a leader, you're a better mom, and because you're because you're a mom, you're a better leader. I think that's a beautiful thought. I think I'm taking out of what you mentioned. So I think Yen, I see you're back. So welcome back.
Thank you. I think I got teleported to Mars, and I'm back. Yeah, it didn't take long, did it? My computer froze. I had to reboot. So, yeah.
Great. So welcoming you back with a question, Yen. I'm aiming this question at you. So I think we all are. So we all discuss about the new normal. I think this is like a very common word these days, which doesn't need any explanation or definition. So Yen, as a business leader yourself, how do you define leadership in the new normal, and especially to the topic that we're discussing today? What's the impact on this?
Right. Okay. So I missed the part about role model because I have a lot to say about role modeling, but we'll come back to that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll come back to that. I'd love to talk about that
because
because it's has I mean, in many ways that's why I mean mentoring and role model has had a big influence on my life. Yeah, but we'll come back to that. Okay. So I was recently asked to contribute to a LinkedIn article that was published today about about gender inequality. How do we and they wanted a men's perspective. Yeah. So you can read this on LinkedIn, but let me and this is my contribution to that article. Yeah. So what I said, quote, is that I've noticed generally that when given the opportunity to lead, women very often can do a good job. Yeah, I believe because they are, number one, they're generally less overconfident. They're more thoughtful, more humble, considerate, and also more circumspect. And they care about those that they lead. Yeah, they're compassionate. And these are all good qualities of female leaders. But in fact, I believe these are all qualities. There should be all qualities of good leaders in the new normal. Of good leaders. I'm glad you asked this question. These are all good qualities of a good leader, no matter gender, race, sex, of a leader in the new normal. So then I end up with so women, yes, they should worry less and show up more. Yeah, so that was my contribution to the articles. I just want to quote it here. My views on leadership and women. And I mean, I know many. I worked with many women before, and of course, Sukun mentioned her mom. So I'm gonna bring up my mom as well. She was my first hero, right? I mean, of course, we had our differences, but when I look back, she's passed away just a little bit over a year ago. In the U.S. because of COVID. I didn't get to see her before she passed away, but we get to get to attend her, her memorial and all that. Just a little bit over. She was 94 years old. And I look back, I wrote a little tribute to her, of her. But one of the things, it was because of her that I realized that I am who I am today. Her emphasis on family values, on education, on the fact that we need to. She always, wanted us to remember our Chinese heritage. So she forced us to study Chinese even when we immigrated overseas. She had a very strong moral character and integrity of the heart. Yeah, so those are the things. And I look at back, and she's a tiny woman. She barely reached up to my shoulder. Yeah, if you see it, but her spine was as straight, right? She had her spine was very straight because of her moral character. So I look at that, I said, wow, and I have many women, that I work with since then, in both professionally, in business, in a lot of my nonprofits and social organizations. First of all, most women that volunteer for my organization are women, over 80%. So women they're always more ready to want to volunteer, contribute. I must say that they have a good heart. Yeah, so so again, just repeat, those are the qualities of good women leaders, but also more and more qualities of good leaders, period. And let me conclude with that one.
That's very enlightening and inspiring, and thank you so much for that. So I'd like to come to Sukun with the same question, Sukun. So we were discussing about, or rather Yen was discussing about leadership in the new normal. So you as a leader, I think especially you work with different cultures, different countries. So how do you define leadership in the new normal? And maybe you can share some experiences, any thoughts in your mind about this?
Actually, I think I always kind of like to go back to the core, right? Whether it's the new normal or not the new normal, with pandemic or no pandemic, everyone wants to be valued and respected. Everyone wants to have a feeling of sense of belonging. And so if we treat them as be a human first, right, before you be a manager. I always kind of use the word. So if we actually go back to that, whether the platform can be different, so it doesn't matter, the platform like Teams or the platform face-to-face, but of course it does have that, physically there are certain things that we just cannot be replaced. I'm not trying to divulge that, all right? What I'm saying is that the core of the principle of how we lead, it's really back to our core, because how we lead depends on who we are. I fundamentally believe in it. We will find ways to connect if you truly believe that's how we want to connect. And so as an example right now, there are so many people talking about well-being, mental stress, fairness. I know we're moving a little bit from like gender bias here, but and obviously marginalized people with disability. If we want to connect with people, we have to connect personally. You can't do it in a group anymore because the introverted will not be able to speak up. You really have to reach out to them and ask them. And if it matters to you, you will make time. It's a fact. Because just like no matter how busy we are, we will make time, right? So back to this leading in the new normal is that if something is telling you not right, you will go and fix it. You will find ways, and especially people like us women, we're so resourceful. we will galvanize, we will influence, we will, do whatever it takes to actually reach out and help in one way or another. So fundamentally, I would just say, go back to the core, go back to what you value the most. And if that situation or the person or the circumstance is so critical, your calling will be there. And because we all have, resources, and we have the support system. And even if we don't, as a leader, nowadays there's a lot of word about the word vulnerable, right? Be transparent, be vulnerable, be empathy. you have to take it to the next level of what it means for you. Don't fake it. At the end of the day, people see it through. Can you be consistent with it? Are you saying what are you doing what you're saying, or it's just on the stage preaching, or are you real in the one-on-one connection? So, not easy, but I would just kind of say a lot of times the answer is not outside, the answer is within. And so when you are not sure how you should navigate as a leader, sometimes it's good to pause. Sometimes it's good to just kind of sit still and let the answer come and say, in this situation, how should I navigate? And most often than not, actually they do, rather than, going out like a headless chicken, running around and trying to figure the answer. So that's how I would actually navigate this through.
Thank you, Sukun. I think the most powerful point, if I may pick from that, is before becoming a leader, you're a human. I think first be a human at core. I think that's a very powerful thought, Sukun. So I have another question. I think I'll aim this question at both of you, Sukun and Yen, because this is directly relevant to the tech industry. So this is an external question. So it is asking, do you think there are any existing misconceptions or biases among women regarding work in the tech industry or women in the tech industry? So let me repeat. Do you think there are any existing misconceptions or biases among women in the tech industry or women in the tech industry? I think it is mainly asking about the women who are in tech industry and also women who are interested in coming into tech industry probably are preventing them because of these misconceptions or biases. So maybe Sukun, maybe you can start and then Yen can take over after you.
I think earlier on, I kind of mentioned there's a lot of things that are kind of ingrained, right? And it's also circumstantial. So the biases can happen all the way from home, what our parents or maybe the relatives or friends are telling us. And then you have these ingrained thinking at education, right? And then at workplace. And then in the community. So it all kind of adds up to it. So it's not one thing, but it's kind of small little things that gives you the perception or biasness of women. And so you're right. Right now, STEM, while a lot of, we're still encouraging a lot of women to go to STEM. Is it bad? It's getting better. It's a fact, right? The STEM is actually improving. It's getting better. Is it where we want it to be? Not exactly where we want it to be. And even right now, only 8% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. But to think about just a couple of years ago is a 4%. Hey, that's a dramatic double, but still it's 8%, right? So I would say focus on what we can control. I think it's better for us to focus on the community, because there is a saying, and I can't remember where I read it, right? It says, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. If you educate a woman, you educate the community. and so for us to be able to actually think about the biasness, and things are moving quickly with the pandemic, it brings equalization, a lot of equalization to the technology, to the digital. And I think about new markets. I mean, some of the stories are so inspiring. I do feel that when it comes to the biasness, yes, they are. I'd love to take forward on what we can do about it more, rather than talking about the problem in itself. So what can we do? I think as women, we can help to make sure we provide more opportunity. Let's be clear about employee retention. Let's be mindful about performance management. Let's bring forth ability for them to be able to show the challenges, asking for help, and that include myself, show leading that. Recently, my mom had a stroke and I shared it with my team rather than hiding it, because then it allows people to say it is okay to say something at home rather than trying to cover up and you get stressful about it, right? And then encourage people to actually acknowledge and give kudos and credit. Oftentimes, what I realize or recognize is that we're not giving enough encouragement. We feel that giving a generous acknowledgement is stripping away some kind of a status. There is that stigma as well. So I would encourage that, you know, no matter how good, how bad the situation is, be encouraged to share. And one thing about sharing is don't feel obliged or that you have to share the more painful story than the person before you. Sometimes people say, oh no, you know what, I wasn't abused. You know, I had a good, let's say, upbringing, and then I had great family. Oh, there's nothing much to share. It's not true. Everyone can share because everyone have a story that someone else can relate to. So I would encourage, just, you know, regulate that temperature, find more common grounds, and you will actually resonate not just the woman, obviously the man, and also a lot of the spectrum of you know, of races and religion and so on and so forth. So specifically for that technology, again, maybe my summary is that let's focus on what we can do together, rather than worry too much about the biasness, which can or cannot be true for many generations, which based purely on just their lack of awareness.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Sukun. I think you also made a valid point. I mean, progress is progress. It might be slow, but it doesn't matter. But we are progressing. I think that's the key here. So, so Yen, same question, but I'll give it a bit of a different twist based on what Sukun mentioned. So we're talking about in the tech industry, what kind of you know, misconceptions, biases are there. But you being the male colleague here or the male ally here, so let me ask you. So, so how have you seen this, and what have you done, or what can a male colleague do in a situation like this? So why not we take the same question, but more from your angle, and what can be done on that?
Yeah. Okay. Let me. Yeah. I want to answer that question. The three things I want to talk about. Yeah. One is, of course, what's, you know, just kind of add to what Sukun just said. What she's saying is that we have to bring our humanity and humility to work. And I think women, you know, that starts with leadership. And I think women leaders probably can do that, you know, better than male generally. Yeah, they're more willing to. Second thing is that I'm going to address the last question that you just, but I also want to talk about the tech industry. Is not, I mean, okay, first of all, role modeling. Let's talk about role modeling. There are many women leaders in the tech industry, many. Yeah, there are many I can point to. Okay. There was one that really came to mind, was the ex-Googler who went on to you know, to become the CEO of Yahoo, Marissa. I mean, she was a star. She was a star at Google. I think she started off as a product manager. So the tech industry is not one monolithic industry. There are many aspects to it. Yeah, and there are many roles any of us can play. So okay, so having said that, I think there's also hard skills versus soft skills. Yeah, hard skill. No question, anyone want to go into the tech industry need to master the hard skills, right? Need to master the core skills of being in the tech industry, whether that's software development, whether that's, you know, product management, whether that's design, you know, user journey, whatever, right? But there's also soft skills. Yeah. That is becoming more and more important. I think that's where women has an advantage, right? Again, play to your strength. Play to your strength. Things like empathy, things like teamwork, things like compassion, empathy. Talk about empathy. Microsoft. Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna say this because this is probably Su Hung's line, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The new CEO, right, Satya Nadella, CEO for 10 years now, I think. He completely changed the culture of Microsoft. I've been following Microsoft for a long time because I worked at Apple, right? Got to follow Microsoft as well. And you know, at Microsoft, it went from a very alpha male kind of culture, correct me if I'm wrong, into workplace that where empathy now is the ethos. What do I mean by I mean, if you read about what he write about, what he said, because empathy for what? Empathy, think about empathy. Empathy is at the core. Think about being empathetic for your clients, for your customer. It's very, very important. Put yourself in customers' shoes. Can you think for them? Can you feel their pain points? Can you solve their problems? That's what I mean by empathy. Empathy for your fellow employees, empathy for your leaders, empathy for your employers, empathy for your colleagues. It goes down the line, right? So empathy is now become, so again, going back, soft skills can be, so if you can master everything without being equal, if you master the hard skills, then everything else being equal, then women has a natural advantage because of this. Of course, because their natural inclination to be more empathetic, to be more compassionate, to be more team-based, right? So I hope that addressed some of the issues about working in the tech industry and how can you be successful no matter which gender, yeah. And role modeling. I look at some of the successful people in the tech, women. What are their careers like? How is there something you can take away? Of course, again, going back to Katsuri's point about each of us is different, we're unique, we're on our own journey, but we can always take away from other people's, there's something to learn from everyone as well.
Absolutely, yeah, that's so inspiring, and that's so helpful. Thank you so much for that. So I think Kasturi is back. So let me take one question. I think we have about 20 minutes more, so I'm going to be just giving you this heads up. There is 20 minutes more, so aiming at 2 more question rounds. So let me aim this question at all 3 of you, Kasturi, and Luan Sukun. So in line with this topic, I think as leaders, there's a lot that I'm very sure not only for the International Women's Day, on a day in, day out basis, there's a lot of things that you do in your organizations as business leaders. So if I may ask as a broad open-ended question, what is the next big thing you want to conquer? It can be about this topic, it can be about leadership. So if I may aim a broad question to all 3 of you, what is the next big thing that you aim at conquering? What would that be? So maybe may I start with Yen again? So I think you can go first and then we go to the 2 ladies. Yes.
Okay, good. I thought usually ladies go first, yeah, but it's okay, I'll go first on this one. Okay, I'm gonna read something here from my, it was in my bio, but I'm gonna read it because this is, this is something that's very important to me, and I think in terms of what I do, yeah, how I view the world. So and this is about myself, yeah. In a fast-paced world where the only constant is change, I believe that there's an urgent need for each of us to draw on our strength and creative potential as human beings, to connect with our higher self and our deeper purpose to contribute towards humanity in a positive and impactful way. Yeah, I enjoy building ecosystems and mobilizing the community to create positive social change. And then I'm going to end up with the launch of my family foundation and many other social initiatives that I founded or co-founded. I devote now, all my time pretty much to serving the society and the nation, yeah, in my various capacities. And my mission in life now is to really to help bring about a kinder, gentler, more inclusive, more just, and more sustainable world. So this is my life. This is my purpose now in my life, to help bring about a kinder. That's why today's conversation is very, very relevant, right? Because gender equality is part of that, creating a kinder, gender, more inclusive. Right, and also, and I want to end up with this, yeah, because I believe in a world where any gender, any race, any nation is marginalized, yeah, where they are not able to contribute as they could, or the best they could as their potential allows it, then the world is lesser for it. The world is lesser for it, not just gender, but gender is a big topic because half of the world is male, female. Right, so if women are marginalized, then we're not really using, and we all know that the world, we're facing a lot of challenges. Yeah, we're not gonna name all the challenges that we're all facing as a race, as a humanity. There's no gender anymore. We're all facing the same challenges. Yeah, and just the recent, and I can name 3 or 4 or 5 things that these are the biggest challenges that we face as a humanity in a long time, probably in history. One of them, of course, is climate change. Yeah. And the other one is the pandemic, which is not going to go away. Yeah. And there are many others. Yeah. So anyway, so I think the only way to move forward for me is that we allow the opportunity and the space for everyone to contribute as the potential allowed to their fullest potential as a human being.
Thank you, Yen. Kasturi, what's the next thing you want to conquer?
So Tilanka, to lay context, I'm never a person who says I want to conquer something. I just get about doing my job. So where I'm concerned, I'm not looking at another summit. But from a country's perspective, I think I love to influence is one is for more women and girls to be part of the economic ecosystem, because the country needs more productivity from all of us. When you have majority of the women out of the workforce, and if you take even from a rate of the same ratio of the male women, the gender ratio, you are talking about the best of the workforce are out of the race, right? So you need to get them in so that the country can prosper. Second thing is, like I think Sue said, I just love the fact that the work benefits by being a parent or a woman, and the woman benefits by going to work, because it kind of, you take the strengths from each side of it and you blend it. The women and girls play a big part in influencing the way we integrate into society. By that, what I mean is making sure we influence this racial harmony in, because Sri Lanka, we need it. And given the tough times we're going to face, generally what is predictably done is they divide and rule, and you bring the racial disharmony to make sure that there is division among the voter base. So women can influence that, and they are the custodians of kids for the next gen. I mean, this gen, of course, I must say that you could shift their perception, but for the next gen, if you can play their part in the organizations and in their communities and homes, that would be a big part of what I love to influence as a change. So two pillars I'll talk about in that context. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is very important, Kasturi. I think if I may rephrase, so one is to make sure more and more women take part in the economic contribution, so we rebuild the economy in the country. And also the second one was also very important, as you said, women, how they can impact the lives, basically actually nurture a generation. So these things can be reversed. So important, Kasturi. Thank you so much for that. Sukoon, same thing. Again, I'll use the same word though. What's your next thing that you want to conquer?
Thank you. You know what? Actually, even the word conquer is so masculine, right?
No. You can replace
it. And then we like to kind of taper it a bit, soften it, or whatever word you want to call it, but it's still very convicted, right? I kind of agree as well, like Kasturi said, I never really think about the next thing I want to conquer or next summit I want to climb. Although I just want to quote this, and I was searching for it, and it actually, this is from Plato. Plato says, right, the best victory is to conquer self. I think I'll just say, you know, for me, being very humble, I think there's still a lot of things I need to do a better job. I want to be able to continue to live my values, because I think that's the anchor when everything else is shifting. I like to be able to continue to learn and adjust and refine the purpose. I haven't really built it as strong as what Yen has read it out so succinctly in his mind. I kind of go with the flow when I see an opportunity, use a bit of my instinct. But one thing is, because of where we were before, I just make sure no one is left behind. Somehow that resonate with me, leave no one behind. And so whether leaving no one behind as the big, country of the 9 countries, of course, the Sri Lanka situation, and if you look at Myanmar situation, they're just ongoing, and I'm sure you know which other part of the world we're talking about. And leaving no one behind can just mean a little voice there. I think I want to be able to think of it as not trying to like change the whole world, but maybe it just begin with just helping one person. So, and that's part of that whole conquering self, you know. Not is about next big thing, but it can be just very, very many small things. And finally, I want to be a bit more kind and forgiving to myself, frankly. Sometimes I beat myself up a lot, and I just kudos a bit. So, you know, this whole break the bias, I was telling my team, this thing, very strong, right? The break the bias logo is very strong. I think maybe there's another way, just hug myself. It's okay. Forgiving, hugging it. So there's playing around with it, how situational it's what I would love to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukun. I think it's really beautiful how what all three of you added. So I think I feel like rephrasing the question now. I think in line with what you mentioned, it's actually about the change that you want to see in yourself and in the society. I think what is the role that you play in making sure that the change that you want to see in the world or the society, how you bring about. So I think we have come to the last 10 minutes of the panel discussion. So I think so far it has been very insightful, very inspiring. So thank you so much to all three of you. So as the last or the concluding question, let me ask a common question again, and that is in our audience, so whether it be males or females who are in our audience. So as a key takeout of this, of hearing this conversation, what would you like it to be? So to this audience, if you are to give like one key message to the audience, what would it be as the key takeout of this discussion today? May I start with Kasturi?
So I think what we can do is change the way we be very self-aware about our biases. We have biases as well. Also, make sure you influence your people around you to have conversation without biases. What I mean is, let's move the gender out of the equation, talk about the competency and the capability. Let's even do our part in conversations where we bring up kids and say, you're playing with cars, you're not a boy, or you're crying like a girl. Take these out of the conversation. Those are all biases if you have that. So let's do that our part, because you need to fundamentally change it from the bottom so that in another 10 years, you're not going to look at a leader and think this leader has to form a shape, profile, or talk away or own a seat a certain way. It doesn't happen to be that. So do our part, and it starts with us. Be very aware about the biases you have when you are when you are dealing with people, when you are at the point of recruitment, when you're promoting, when you are sitting at meetings, because subconsciously we also have biases. Yeah.
Thank you, Kasturi. I think that is very important. I think especially from the childhood itself, this has to be nurtured. So that's an important message. Thank you. If I may go to Yen Lu now. Yen Lu, what is the key message you want the audience to remember?
Okay, first of all, we need to show up for. I talk about showing up for life. We have to show up, you know, for life. Yeah, whether women or men. And I think I really believe that change begins with each of us. Going back to that line about we need to work on ourselves first. Yeah, Sukun talked about that. But we need to work on ourselves. Change begins with each of us, and change starts from the inside, and you know, and spread outwards, right, to those around us. Yeah. So because again, you know, I think if we talk about global change, if change is about global change, which I think ultimately needs to be, then it needs to start with the individual change, each of us. Yeah, and it starts from the inside first. Yeah, working out, you know, inside, what I call the inside out approach, which is a very Asian or Eastern way philosophy of life and work. Yeah. So anyway, that's my parting line. Yeah. So you know, global transformation begins with personal transformation. So change, this going to Gandhi, right? We have to be the change that we want to see in the world. Ourselves, our families, our neighbors, it goes out from there. Right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ian. That is so inspiring. That is so true. So be the change that you want to see in the world. Yeah, thank you. Sukoon?
Yeah. Well, one last thing, maybe I'll just say perspective is important. Sometimes don't take things too personally, you know, and when we are confronted with very trying situation, be it personal or professional, and there is no ideal option, or maybe the logic doesn't, I mean, the logic contradicts with the gut. Your brain is telling you to do one thing, your gut is telling you to do another thing, and you have to make trade-offs, and you can't make any trade-offs, right? So I just think in that case, take a third-party view. Just take a third-party view, because if it's happening to someone that you care or you love, ask yourself, what would be the advice you would give to that person? So just have that perspective, because then you can enjoy life a little bit and give it a bit of a breather. So that's what I would say, take the party. And I'm sharing it because it happened to me personally, when you're just so confronted with it. And the moment I read this, it's literally one sentence and said, what would you advise if it happened to that one person you love? Oh my God. Ka-ching! It's like literally it just opens up. So thank you again, and it's so nice to have all of you, and I learned a lot from listening to you as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Sukoon, and Kasturi, Yenlu, and Sukoon. I think it has been a very inspiring discussion. I think I'm not even going to make an effort to, summarize what you all mentioned, because there's so much. I think I'll need another hour, because there is so much wisdom and experience that has been shared, and also a lot of inspiration, I would say. I think at a time that it is needed the most. So I think a few things, as you know, afterthoughts, key takeaways from what you mentioned. I think it all came down to you. I think be the change that you want to see in the world. I think there's so much that you start with humbleness from yourself. I think that is something that came again and again. So I'd like to leave that thought as we conclude. So whatever the change that you want to see, I think it starts from you. I think that's one of the key messages that came from all three of you. So let me once again thank our three panelists today. Kasturi Chellaraja Wilson, Executive Director, Group CEO, Hemas Holdings PLC, Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for joining us, Kasturi. Yen Lu Chow, Executive Chairman, Poultry Foundation Singapore, and Sukoon Sher, General Manager, Southeast Asia New Markets at Microsoft. So thank you very much to all three of you. And it has been a pleasant discussion, and I'm very sure even the audience would have found it very interesting. And I would also like to thank everyone who joined us virtually. Thank you so much for staying with us until this time, and have a good evening. Thank you very much, everyone.